The pristine halls of the Galactic Medical Academy gleamed with an iridescent sheen as Professor Zilax glided toward the lecture hall. Their crystalline appendages clinked softly against the polished floor, creating a gentle melody that announced their approach. Inside, 35 of the brightest medical students from across the galaxy waited with anticipation for their first practical diagnosis class. Today marks a historic moment, Professor Zilax announced, their voice resonating through the chamber. We welcome our first human student, Sarah Chen, from the Deathworld, classified as Earth. The chamber erupted in hushed whispers. A Malorian student's bioluminescent spots pulsed with excitement, while a Vexian's facial tendrils curled inward with concern. Sarah sat quietly in the middle row, her calm demeanor contrasting sharply with the ripple of reactions around her. Professor, called out Trix Na, a Centaurian whose silver scales shimmered with each movement. I read that humans regularly survive conditions that would be lethal to most species. Is this relevant to our medical studies? Sarah smiled, raising her hand to respond. Professor Zilax nodded, encouraging her to speak. During my childhood on Earth, I experienced 3 major natural disasters, Sarah explained, her voice steady and warm. A magnitude 7 earthquake, a category 4 hurricane, and a volcanic eruption that covered my city in ash. Each event taught our medical community new ways to adapt and heal. The class stared in stunned silence. To them, any one of these events would have resulted in a planetary evacuation. Precisely why Sarah's perspective will be valuable, Professor Zilax continued, activating the holographic diagnostic terminal. Now, for today's practical exercise. The 3-dimensional image materialized in the center of the room, depicting a patient with multiple symptoms. The alien students immediately reached for their quantum scanners and biological analysis tools. Sarah stood up, approaching the hologram with nothing but her eyes and experience. May I ask the patient some questions? She requested. Professor Zilax's crystalline form sparkled with interest. The simulation is interactive. Proceed. When did the discoloration around your primary breathing apparatus begin? Sarah asked, gesturing to a subtle change in the hologram's skin tone. The simulated patient responded with a series of details. Sarah nodded, circling the hologram thoughtfully. She noted the patient's posture, the rhythm of their breathing, and the slight asymmetry in their movement. Based on the symptoms and environmental factors, Sarah concluded after 5 minutes of observation, this appears to be a case of crystalline resonance disruption, complicated by exposure to non-native atmospheric particles. The class fell silent again. Professor Zilax's appendages trembled with excitement. Correct, they exclaimed. But how did you diagnose this without running a quantum analysis or cellular scan? On Earth, we often need to diagnose patients in situations where technology isn't available, Sarah explained. We learn to observe patterns, ask targeted questions, and connect symptoms to environmental factors. The slight iridescence around the breathing apparatus, combined with the altered gait pattern, matches descriptions I studied of CRD cases. The alien students began furiously taking notes. A Malorian raised all 4 hands simultaneously, eager to ask questions about human diagnostic methods. Professor Zilax's crystalline form glowed with approval. This, students, is why the Academy chose to expand our enrollment to include Deathworlders. Their ability to adapt and observe might teach us all something valuable about medical practice. As the class progressed, Sarah's classmates gradually moved closer to her station, their initial apprehension giving way to genuine curiosity. By the end of the session, even the most skeptical students were asking about Earth's medical techniques. Tomorrow, Professor Zilax announced as the class concluded, we begin our wilderness survival course. I expect everyone to bring an open mind, and perhaps learn that sophisticated technology isn't always the answer to medical challenges. Sarah packed her simple medical kit, hiding a smile as she overheard her classmates discussing human resilience with newfound respect. This was just the beginning, and she had so much more to share. The training shuttle hummed softly as it carried the medical students through the atmosphere of Proxima Thule, a moon chosen for its variety of terrain types. Sarah sat near the viewport, watching the purple clouds swirl beneath them. Her classmates were busy checking their advanced survival gear, each piece worth more than a year's salary on Earth. Remember, Professor Zilax's crystalline form shimmered as they addressed the class. This exercise simulates emergency response in less than ideal conditions. Your quantum medical suites will be limited to basic functions only. Trixna raised a scaled hand. Professor, what constitutes a basic function in human medical? The question was cut short by a violent shudder that ran through the shuttle. Warning lights flashed crimson across the cabin as the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. Unexpected meteor shower. Brace for emergency protocol. Sarah's survival instincts kicked in instantly. Everyone, grab the closest fixed object, she shouted, demonstrating by wrapping her arms around a support beam. Her classmates, trained for emergencies but never having experienced one, followed her lead with remarkable speed. The shuttle's emergency systems engaged, creating a cushioning field around the vessel. But as they descended rapidly through Proxima Alua's atmosphere, Sarah noticed something that made her heart race. Professor Zilax was moving through the cabin, using their crystalline appendages to secure loose equipment that threatened to harm the students. "Professor, get down," Sarah called out, but it was too late. The shuttle hit a pocket of turbulence, sending equipment crashing around the cabin. Professor Zilax's body shielded two Malorian students from a flying medical cabinet, but the impact created a spiderweb of cracks across their crystalline form. The landing was rough but controlled. As the dust settled, Sarah was already moving, her mind categorizing priorities just as she'd been taught during Earth's disaster response training. "Is everyone conscious? Call out if you can hear me." A chorus of shaken voices responded. Sarah reached Professor Zilax first, her hands hovering over the fractured crystal surface of their body. The quantum medical suites, normally capable of molecular reconstruction, lay damaged around the cabin. "I need light, and I need it now," Sarah commanded, her voice steady. The Vexian student activated their bioluminescent patches, providing perfect illumination. "Professor, can you tell me where the resonance point of your crystal matrix is located?" Professor Zilax's voice came out strained but clear. "Upper left quadrant, near the primary growth plane." Sarah's mind raced through her knowledge of crystal formations from Earth's geology courses. "Trixna, I need the thermal regulator from your survival pack. Malorian students, your natural static field might help stabilize the crystal structure. Can you generate a low-frequency charge?" The aliens moved with purpose now, falling into step with Sarah's confident directions. She carefully positioned the Malorian's hands around Professor Zilax's injuries, using the thermal regulator to prevent further crack propagation. "This is unorthodox," Professor Zilax managed to say, watching Sarah work. "But I can feel the crystal matrix stabilizing." Sarah managed a small smile. "Sometimes unorthodox is all we have. On Earth, we learn to combine different scientific principles when medical technology isn't available. Your crystalline structure isn't too different from some minerals we treat in emergency geology situations." Looking around the cabin, Sarah quickly assessed their situation. The shuttle's communication array was damaged, the quantum medical equipment was offline, and they had limited supplies. But as she watched her classmates working together, seamlessly blending their species' unique abilities with her improvised techniques, she saw something more valuable than any advanced technology: adaptation and cooperation. "We're not done yet," Sarah announced, noting the approaching weather front through the viewport. "This is just the beginning of our survival course, and I have a feeling it's going to be more practical than anyone planned." The crashed shuttle's interior had transformed into an impromptu medical bay. Sarah moved with practiced efficiency, gathering seemingly random items from the debris while her classmates watched with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Professor Zilax rested against the wall, their crystalline form now stabilized but still showing worrying fracture patterns. "I need everyone's help to create some basic medical tools," Sarah announced, laying out her collected items on a makeshift table. "These might look primitive, but they'll help us monitor the professor's condition." "But how can we create medical tools from garbage?" asked Xifal, their antenna twitching with doubt as they examined a broken piece of the shuttle's reflective paneling. Sarah held up the panel with a confident smile. "This isn't garbage. This is a diagnostic tool waiting to happen. See how clean the break is. The reflective surface is perfect for examining crystal structures." She carefully shaped the edge using a small piece of industrial diamond from their survival kit. Trixna, your scales can detect subtle temperature changes, right? Sarah asked, motioning the Centaurian closer. We can use that ability combined with this mirror to monitor the professor's crystal integrity. Any deviation in the refraction pattern will show us problem areas before they become critical. The alien students gathered around as Sarah demonstrated how to position the makeshift tools. She showed them how to use the shuttle's emergency lights to create specific illumination angles, transforming simple reflection into a sophisticated monitoring system. The hydroponic garden mesh, Sarah continued, pulling strips of the specialized material from a damaged wall compartment, has microchannels designed for nutrient flow. If we layer it correctly, her fingers worked quickly, weaving the mesh into a complex pattern. It becomes a pressure bandage that can distribute force evenly across crystalline surfaces. Professor Zilak's eyes glowed with interest as they watched their students adapt. Remarkable. You're creating a medical support system using basic physical principles rather than relying on programmed responses. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most reliable, Sarah replied, now working on another invention. She had discovered that the temperature difference between the shuttle's outer hull and its interior components could be harnessed. Look at this. We can create a thermal gradient device for managing crystal stress points. The Malorian students, initially skeptical, found themselves intrigued by the ingenuity. Using their natural ability to generate static fields, they helped Sarah calibrate the makeshift devices. Each successful adaptation built their confidence in these unconventional methods. On Earth, Sarah explained while showing SciFi how to read refraction patterns. We often say necessity is the mother of invention. When you don't have exactly what you need, you learn to work with what you have. A small victory came when they successfully created a crystalline resonance detector using nothing but debris and the combined natural abilities of 3 different species. The device, though crude by galactic standards, provided clear readings of Professor Zilak's recovery progress. I never understood before, Trix Knott admitted, carefully adjusting their scale sensitivity to match the monitoring requirements, why humans were considered adaptable. I thought it meant you could survive harsh conditions, but it's more than that, isn't it? Sarah nodded, pride evident in her smile. Adaptation isn't just about survival. It's about seeing possibilities where others might see problems. Every challenge is an opportunity to learn and create something new. As she looked around at her classmates now working confidently with their improvised equipment, Sarah saw something transformative taking place. These beings from advanced civilizations were beginning to understand that true medical expertise went beyond relying on sophisticated technology. Professor, SciFi called out excitedly, I'm detecting a positive change in your crystal matrix resonance pattern. Indeed, Professor Zelax responded, their voice stronger than before. And I'm detecting a positive change in my students' understanding of medical practice. Sarah frowned at the communication unit's static field display. Despite their best efforts, no signal penetrated the thick atmospheric interference of Proxima Centauri. The purple clouds above had darkened to a deep indigo, and the temperature was dropping rapidly. Our communication devices operate on quantum entanglement, Trixnay explained, silver scales dulling with concern. Nothing should be able to disrupt them. Something in the atmosphere is affecting the quantum field stability, Professor Zylax observed from their resting position. Their crystalline form had improved, but the fracture lines still caught the fading light ominously. Sarah moved to the shuttle's entrance, studying the alien landscape. On Earth, we have similar phenomena near certain mineral deposits. The question isn't why we can't communicate. It's how we're going to handle the coming night. The alien students gathered near the shuttle's damaged environmental control system, their various forms of bioluminescence creating a gentle glow in the growing darkness. The temperature had already dropped 15 degrees. Most of our species come from climate-controlled worlds, SciFi said, antennae drooping. We're not adapted to temperature extremes. Sarah was already moving, pulling insulation material from the shuttle's walls. Then we'll adapt the environment to suit us. Professor, what's the minimum safe temperature for your crystal structure? -10 degrees standard, Professor Zelax replied. Below that, the fracture lines could become unstable. Right. Sarah laid out the insulation in a circular pattern. On Earth, we study ancient survival techniques. Indigenous peoples in Arctic regions would build shelters from ice and snow, trapping heat through clever architecture. We can apply the same principle here. She demonstrated how to layer the insulation, creating a smaller space within the show's cabin. Trixna, your scales reflect heat. You'll be our inner layer. Malorians, your static field can help trap warm air if you maintain a low charge. Xifal, your species' natural silk can help seal any gaps. The aliens worked together, following Sarah's instructions with growing confidence. As the makeshift shelter took shape, she shared stories of Earth's extreme weather survivors. There was a woman who survived 3 days in a blizzard by building a snow cave. Sarah explained while adjusting the insulation. She used her knowledge of heat conservation and snow's insulating properties to stay alive until rescue came. But snow is frozen water, one of the Malorian students noted. Wouldn't that make you colder? Actually, it's an excellent insulator when used correctly. Like how we're using the shell's walls now. It's all about understanding how heat moves and creating barriers to keep it where you need it. As night fell completely, the temperature outside plummeted. Inside their improvised shelter, however, the combined body heat and carefully arranged insulation maintained a stable environment. Professor Zilak's readings remained steady, and the other students found themselves surprisingly comfortable. I never thought I'd feel safe in such primitive conditions. Trixna admitted, their scales now gleaming warmly in the dim light. On my world, we rely on atmospheric processors for everything. That's the thing about survival, Sarah replied, checking the insulation seals. It's not about having the best technology. It's about understanding principles and being creative with what you have. A distant rumble drew their attention. Through the shell's viewport, they could see dramatic electrical storms illuminating the horizon. Those storms, Professor Zalax observed, are why we chose this moon for training. They simulate extreme conditions found on many emergency response sites, though I admit I didn't expect us to experience them quite so personally. Sarah watched the lightning dance across the alien sky, reminiscent of Earth's monsoon seasons. Every environment, no matter how harsh, has patterns we can understand and work with. Tomorrow, we'll need to find better shelter and resources. But for now, we've turned this shuttle into our own survival capsule. The alien students, warm and secure in their makeshift shelter, began to see their emergency landing in a new light, not as a disaster, but as an unprecedented learning opportunity. Morning brought new challenges as the electrical storms intensified. Sarah led the group away from their damaged shuttle, carrying salvage supplies toward a series of cave formations she had spotted in the distance. Professor Zalax moved steadily now, their crystal structure holding stable thanks to the improvised treatments. These cave formations remind me of the bioluminescent caverns of Centauri Prime. Trixnet observed as they approached the entrance. Their scales rippled with reflected light from the distant lightning strikes. Sarah paused at the cave mouth, retrieving a small piece of shuttle debris. She tossed it inside, listening carefully to its landing. Sound suggests a solid floor, but we should still proceed with caution. Sifal, can your antennae detect any air current patterns? The careful planning stopped abruptly when they saw what awaited them inside. The cave walls pulsed with gentle waves of blue-green light, emanating from thousands of small, floating organisms. Several students instinctively moved backward. Fascinating, Sarah breathed, her eyes lighting up with recognition. They're behaving just like Earth's deep-sea bioluminescent plankton. Look at how they respond to air movements. As she spoke, a wave of her hand created ripples in the light, the creatures moving in synchronized patterns. Instead of showing fear, Sarah approached them with calculated interest. These remind me of the organisms in the Mariana Trench, she explained, carefully observing their behavior. They use light for communication and navigation. See how they cluster in specific formations. They're probably following mineral or energy gradients in the cave. Professor Zilak's crystalline form reflected the gentle illumination. Most species would avoid unknown biological entities, especially in a survival situation. Why are you so calm, Sarah? On Earth, we learned that understanding local life forms can be crucial for survival, she replied, already formulating a plan. These creatures aren't showing aggressive behavior. and their light could be incredibly useful for our medical needs. She demonstrated by gently encouraging a cluster of the organisms to gather near Professor Zelak's recovering crystal matrix. The soft illumination perfectly highlighted the healing fracture lines. The wavelength they produce, Sarah explained, adjusting the position of her makeshift diagnostic tools, is ideal for examining crystal structures. Nature often provides better tools than we could design. The alien students watched in amazement as Sarah used the living light sources to create a sophisticated monitoring system. She showed them how to identify different bioluminescent patterns and what they might indicate about the cave's environment. In Earth's oceans, she continued, setting up a treatment area deeper in the cave. We discovered that some bioluminescent organisms produce light through chemical reactions that can have medical applications. While we don't know enough about these creatures to use them that way, their light alone is an invaluable resource. Xiphal's antennae twitched with curiosity. On my world, we terraform environments to suit our needs. But you're suggesting we adapt to work with the environment instead? Exactly, Sarah smiled, arranging their salvaged medical supplies in the living light. Every environment, no matter how alien, has resources we can use if we understand them. These creatures are maintaining a stable temperature in here, probably as part of their life cycle. They're not just light sources, they're our environmental control system. The cave, which had initially seemed intimidating, transformed into a well-lit medical shelter. The bioluminescent organisms created perfect lighting conditions for monitoring patients and performing necessary care. I believe, Professor Zelak observed, their voice carrying a note of admiration, that this is precisely why the Academy wanted a human perspective. You don't just survive in harsh environments, you find ways to thrive in them. Sarah nodded, watching her classmates begin to interact confidently with their unusual environment. That's the key to human adaptability. We don't just accept our surroundings, we learn to understand them. Every challenge is an opportunity to expand our knowledge. Deep in the bioluminescent cave, Xiphal moved carefully along the crystalline formations, collecting mineral samples that Sarah suggested might have natural analgesic properties. Their antennae suddenly detected a shift in the air currents, but the warning came too late. The ground beneath them crumbled, sending them sliding across the sharp crystal floor. Medical emergency, Trix not called out, their scales flashing with alarm patterns. The other students rushed toward the scene, but then something unexpected happened. Instead of freezing or waiting for instructions, the alien students sprang into action. Months of academy training combined with Sarah's practical lessons kicked in automatically. Check for environmental hazards first, the Malorian student announced, generating a static field to illuminate the area more brightly, just like Sarah taught us. Trix's scales shifted to diagnostic mode, detecting temperature variations in Xiphal's body. I'm reading significant trauma to the lower appendages and possible internal injuries based on heat patterns. Sarah watched with pride as her classmates worked together seamlessly. Professor Zelak observed from their recovery area, their crystalline form glowing with approval. We need a way to move them safely, one of the students said. The crystal fragments make standard levitation risky. Look at the cave wall formations, another student pointed out. They're similar to the shuttle debris we used for the professor's splint. We can adapt that technique. The group quickly gathered suitable crystal pieces, using Xiphal's own silk to create secure bindings. They remembered Sarah's lessons about testing materials before applying them to patients. The bioluminescent organisms are clustering differently around these crystals, a Malorian observed. Just like Sarah said, local life forms can indicate environmental properties. These pieces might have beneficial properties. Working together, they created a specialized stretcher that distributed weight evenly while protecting Xiphal's injured areas. The Malorians used their static field to test for crystal stability, while Trix's sensitive scales monitored for any signs of adverse reactions. Sarah stepped forward only to advise, letting her classmates lead the treatment. "What's your next step?" she asked, encouraging their problem-solving. "We need to stabilize the internal injuries," one student responded confidently. "The cave maintains a constant temperature, and these organisms' light helps us monitor vital signs. We can use that to our advantage." They positioned Xifal carefully in a natural alcove where the bioluminescent creatures gathered most densely. The consistent light and temperature created ideal conditions for treatment. Their silk production is compromised, Trixnay noted, scales shifting to show detailed readings. But I remember what you said about Earth Spider, Sarah. We can support the affected systems using external scaffolding until they heal. The students combined their species' natural abilities with their new practical knowledge. The Malorians generated precise static fields to reduce swelling, while others adapted cave minerals into natural remedies, carefully testing each one before application. Professor Zelax moved closer to Sarah. They're not even hesitating to use unconventional methods anymore. The change is remarkable. They're discovering that true medical expertise means adapting to any situation, Sarah replied, watching her classmates work. They're combining their advanced knowledge with practical innovation. Within hours, Xifal's condition stabilized. The improvised treatments worked better than anyone expected, their effectiveness enhanced by the students' growing confidence in their abilities. I never thought I'd feel safe being treated without quantum medical arrays, Xifal admitted, their antennae now moving with more strength. But I actually feel more confident knowing my classmates understand the underlying principles of treatment, not just how to operate equipment. Sarah smiled, remembering her own early lessons in Earth's emergency medical services. That's the beauty of understanding basic principles. Technology can fail, but knowledge and adaptability never lose power. The cave's bioluminescent light pulsed gently around them, a living reminder that nature often provided everything needed for survival, if one only knew how to look. The electrical storms finally cleared on the 7th day, allowing a rescue signal to penetrate the atmosphere. The cave entrance illuminated with the bright lights of a medical rescue vessel as it descended nearby. Sarah and her classmates had just finished their morning assessment of both Professor Zelax and Xifal when they heard the approaching rescue team. Chief Medical Officer Venra strode into the cave, their advanced diagnostic equipment humming. The officer stopped abruptly, surprised by the scene before them. Instead of finding desperate survivors, they discovered an organized medical facility illuminated by living light. Impossible, Venra muttered, checking their quantum scanner. These readings indicate stable recovery patterns in both patients. How did you manage this without proper medical equipment? Professor Zelax's crystalline form sparkled with amusement. Perhaps you should ask my students. They've learned quite a lot about proper medical care over the past week. The rescue team moved through the cave, documenting everything with growing amazement. They found carefully labeled mineral samples, detailed recovery charts drawn on shuttle debris, and sophisticated splints made from crystal formations. This monitoring system, one of the rescue medics noted, studying the way the bioluminescent creatures had been arranged, it's providing better visibility of crystal matrix healing than our standard equipment. Sarah watched as Trix and I confidently explained their adapted treatment methods to the rescue team. We discovered that local organisms could be used as both light sources and environmental indicators. Their natural patterns helped us monitor patient stability. The Malorian students demonstrated their static field techniques, showing how they had refined them to work with the cave's natural properties. By combining our abilities with human-inspired adaptations, we created treatments tailored to our specific situation. Chief Medical Officer Venra shook their head in disbelief. These methods are unorthodox, primitive even, and yet they consulted their advanced diagnostic tools again. The recovery rates are exceptional. Professor Zelax's crystal matrix shows perfect alignment, and Xifal's internal repairs are proceeding better than standard treatment projections. Sometimes, Sarah offered quietly, working with nature instead of trying to override it produces better results. Each environment offers its own solutions if we're willing to learn from it. The rescue team's skepticism gradually transformed into curiosity as the students walked them through their innovations. Professor Zelax recorded everything, knowing this experience would revolutionize their teaching methods at the academy. In all my years of emergency response, Venra admitted, watching Xifal demonstrate their improved mobility, I've never seen students adapt so effectively to crisis conditions. Your understanding of fundamental medical principles is remarkable. Sarah smiled as her classmates eagerly shared their experiences. They're excellent doctors not because they have perfect technology, but because they understand how to work with whatever resources are available. That's what real medical expertise looks like. As the rescue team prepared for evacuation, they found themselves taking notes on the students' improvisations. The bioluminescent organisms, the crystal formations, the natural temperature regulation. Everything had been utilized with careful thought and understanding. The Academy sent us to rescue students, one medic commented to Venra, but it seems we're the ones learning something new. Professor Xilax moved smoothly toward the cave entrance, their restored crystal form catching the light. When we return, I believe it's time to reevaluate our entire approach to medical education. These students have demonstrated that true healing comes from understanding principles, not just operating equipment. As they prepared to leave their unusual shelter, Sarah took one last look at the gently glowing cave that had taught them all so much. The bioluminescent creatures pulsed in patterns that seemed almost like a farewell. You know, Trixna said, their scales shimmering with newfound confidence. I used to think advanced technology made us better doctors. Now I understand. It's not the tools that matter most, but how well you understand the fundamentals of healing. 3 months after their rescue from Proxima Alui, the Galactic Medical Academy's main lecture hall buzzed with excitement. The room had been modified to accommodate students from 20 different species, each area carefully climate-controlled to suit their unique physiologies. Sarah stood at the front, no longer the only human in the room. "Welcome to Advanced Adaptive Medicine," she announced, sharing a knowing smile with her former classmates who now served as teaching assistants. "Today, we begin a new approach to medical education." Professor Xilax's crystalline form caught the light as they moved forward, their once fractured surface now bearing subtle patterns that enhanced their natural beauty. When we first accepted human students into our program, we expected to teach them our advanced methods. Instead, we learned that true medical expertise transcends technology. The lecture hall's displays activated, showing recordings from their survival experience. New students watched in fascination as the footage revealed how ordinary objects had been transformed into sophisticated medical tools. Medical science isn't just about having the best equipment, Trixnay explained, their scales shifting to educational display mode. It's about understanding the principles behind healing and adaptation. Xifal, fully recovered and moving with grace, demonstrated how their own silk production had been permanently enhanced by the innovative treatments they received. We discovered that combining different species' natural abilities with practical innovation could create entirely new medical techniques. The Academy's curriculum had undergone a complete transformation. While quantum medical suites and advanced technology still played important roles, equal emphasis was now placed on understanding fundamental principles and environmental adaptation. Sarah moved through the classroom, showing students how to identify useful properties in common materials. Every environment, every species, every situation offers unique resources. The key is learning to recognize and adapt them to our needs. In one corner, Malorian students practiced generating precise static fields to interface with simple mechanical tools. Nearby, Centaurians learned to use their natural abilities in combination with basic medical principles. The separation between advanced and primitive techniques had dissolved into a more holistic approach. The Academy has already received requests from 17 medical facilities across the galaxy. Professor Xilax announced proudly. They want to implement our new training methods. Our experience has sparked a revolution in medical education. The most significant change was visible in the students themselves. Species that once relied entirely on technology now approached problems with creative confidence. They learned to trust their natural abilities while respecting the innate wisdom found in various cultural approaches to healing. Yesterday's survival situation is tomorrow's standard procedure, Sarah explained, displaying a hologram of their cave medical bay. Every challenge we face teaches us new ways to help future patients. The bioluminescent organisms from Proxima Alui have been carefully studied, leading to breakthroughs in natural lighting systems for medical facilities. Crystal formations similar to those they used were now being incorporated into advanced healing chambers, proving that nature's solutions often surpassed artificial ones. But the most valuable lesson, Professor Xilax concluded, their voice carrying through the hall, wasn't about specific techniques or tools. It was about adaptability, creativity, and the courage to try new approaches. As the class ended, Sarah watched her former classmates guide the new students through basic exercises. Trix now was teaching a group how to read environmental indicators without scanners. Zifal demonstrated emergency splinting techniques using everyday materials. "You changed the way we think about medical training," Professor Zelak said, joining Sarah at the front of the hall. "And in doing so, you've helped us understand something profound about healing itself." Sarah nodded, remembering their days in the cave. The best solutions often come from working with nature rather than trying to overcome it. Every species, every planet, every challenge has something to teach us. Through the lecture hall's window, the galactic core shimmered like distant bioluminescence. Somewhere out there, countless medical situations awaited. But now, thanks to the lessons learned on a remote moon, a new generation of doctors was ready to face them. Armed not just with technology, but with the wisdom to adapt and innovate in any situation.